Welcome everyone and welcome to this week's F1 Fix Setup Track Guide. We are at the Hockenheim ring this week, a track that I really do enjoy. Come around here a few times in the F3 cars and loved it, and after running some laps in this car for this guide, it's no different. Probably even more enjoyable because we have more top end speed and more downforce that this car provides. So really looking forward to racing here this week and seeing you guys out on track. Now, track conditions. So we had a 24-degree track temperature with a cool air temperature of 18 degrees, which is why we are running the soft tyre. As you can see there, the red wall tyre. I generate the track conditions as per iRacing's schedule. So I set the time and date, generate the weather, and then it throws out those conditions for me. It varies from session to session, but it's always very similar conditions, and that is consistent with what we will see throughout the officials in the race week. Now, lap time that I set due to this is a 1 minute 10.8. We will see quicker lap times as always in the qualifying trim because we have less fuel and we have the qualifying battery mode in deployment. I use these track guides in race trim, so we're in the race setup which has a full tank of fuel and we are limited to the balanced deployment mode. So it's still pretty quick, but of course qualifying lap times will be much quicker, just as they are in real life as well. But yeah, this track is, it doesn't really have too much to throw upon you. The most difficult corner is the hairpin, which is coming into your screen right now. For anyone who's raced this track in any series, this is where most crashes happen because it's a very long draft and run down into this corner, and people do get caught out by it. They either overshoot the corner or they lock up their brakes and or they spin on the exit of the corner as well because it is a real tight hairpin, and it's no different in this car, but we have to go low down the gears. But we'll talk about that in more detail in the lap analysis. As always, we are going to see the lap that I set, that 1 minute 10.8 in cockpit view, then a far chase camera angle, and then we're going to analyze that lap and see how we put it all together. So lo and behold, let's get into it. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and enjoy. So everyone, let's see how we put that lap together. Now, as always, want to bring your attention to my brake bias before we head into this analysis. I've got it set to 53.5, indicated in this orange number here. I've got it to 53.5 by bringing the brake bias down to 54 and then using the in-fine adjustment to bring it down to 53.5. As I say in every video, this is personal preference. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to brake bias. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. I personally like my brake bias a little bit further back on open wheel cars because I just lock up the fronts too easily. Some of you may not, so that's totally fine. Play around with it and see what works for you. Now, we've just come out of the last corner and the lap doesn't actually start until we get further down this start-finish straight. It's actually like pretty much where this bridge is, or just before it. But I wanted to bring your attention to this DRS zone here. We have two DRS zones in this track, and this is the first one, and then the second one is further on down the big run into the hairpin, down the long dogleg left. So we go down here, and of course we've got our DRS activated, indicated by the 4 lights on the dash. And then we've crossed the start-finish line. Our lap has started. We're all the way up in the gears at this point, and then we've got our first corner. Now, this is a really enjoyable corner, but you need to be very careful because of that DRS mode. So, it is possible to go through here flat out. It is. But it's very fine margins because you have to do two things. You either have to go through here flat out, you either have to deactivate your DRS mode, so press the button to deactivate it, and you also have to keep your car within the confines of the track, and it's very easy to pick up a 1x here or even a slowdown. So, what I've done is I slightly lift, as you can see here. So, we turn in at the 50. We've got a lot of downforce in this car, so we can turn in a lot later than others. And by lifting, what that does is that deactivates the DRS. So if you turn in here without lifting or without deactivating the DRS, you spin. And I'm speaking from experience. So you need to be careful. It's very similar to Suzuka at the start of the season, where there was no deactivation zone, so you had to lift or you had to deactivate it manually. I found lifting was just much quicker. So around about half throttle, of course, trying to keep it as tight to this curb as we can. There's a big sausage curb on the inside here. Do not hit that sausage curb. It will throw you off. You'll spin the car or you'll cause yourself some damage. But very quick, it's just a slight lift and then you're back on the throttle again. And what that does, that just gets the front end turning in, and you can see even there, we are just within the limits of the track, because this white line here, while we can use this whole curb, this whole blue curb, and we're not actually got any four wheels on the tarmac, this is within the track limits. But if you go over, if I got my left wheel slightly outside this blue and white curb here, I would have picked up a 1x. So you have to be careful there, guys. It's very easy to pick up a 1x every single time you go through that corner. It's tempting because we've got the speed, we've got the downforce, but it's very fine margins. The safest, and as well with deactivating your ERS mode, you know what it's like, or your DRS, you know what it's like when you're in the heat of a battle. You forget. You just forget to deactivate it, and before you know it, you've crashed. So the safest option is just to have a slight lift, and I think it's the sensible option as well. I still set what I think is a very quick lap time, so it's not like you're losing a considerable amount of speed, because you saw how close I was to moving moving outside the track limits. So yeah, slight lift through there, guys. Very simple corner, turn in on the 50, tight to the apex as you can, and then we run down into the next corner, T2. So this, once again, is another overtaking opportunity. But what I would say here is that it's almost not worth overtaking here. Now, some of you will completely disagree with me and will go for an overtaking opportunity whatsoever, but whenever you can. I get that. But at the same time, you have to realise that after you get past this second corner, we're now into a very long run down into the hairpin where you've got DRS mode as well, which can be activated. And if you overtake on this corner, you're then not going to get DRS mode down the back straight. So, a little bit of a mind game maybe playing, guys, is that if someone is on your behind and they do want to overtake at this corner, let them have it. Let them have it. Make sure that you now this corner and the exit, and then you can just get that DRS and draft it easily past them into the hairpin. So bit of strategy is coming into this here. Of course, if it's on the last lap, then it may be that you want to fight for every single corner. But generally speaking, if someone wants to take this corner, let them have it, and then make sure you nail the exit and then get the DRS down the back straight, or back dog leg left. So we want to be braking just before the 100. You can see here, if you want specifics, there's a little concrete runoff here that is when we kind of exactly brake. But I'm thinking visually just before the 100, that's where I'm braking. Of course, we're braking into a straight line. And I shift down here, guys, into third gear. Now we turn in on the 50. We're trail braking through just to control the front end of the car. And what we want to do is we want to keep it, once again, similar to the first corner, but at a much lower speed. Keep it as tight to this apex and this sausage curb as we can without actually hitting it. Now, if you want to shift down into second here, you can. If you're struggling to get the car turning in or you're overshooting the apex, you can do. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to be careful that on exit, not to be too eager on the throttle, because as we know, in the lower gears, it's very, very easy to spin the rear wheels and spin the car. So just an FYI there, guys. But you can see as we hit the apex, that's then when we're then on the throttle, but we're easing on the throttle because you can see the steering input. If we get on full throttle here, we're going to spin the car. Maintaining that input until we unwind the steering wheel, gradually increasing the throttle percentage, and then we're on full gas when we know we've got traction on the rear wheels, and then it's all the way up the gears. Now, just for a reference, this white line here, guys, as I was speaking just a minute ago in regards to letting them have the corner if they really want it, because this DRS, the DRS is here. That's where it starts, where those boards are in the distance. And then this white line here is the detection zone. So if you are behind within 1 second, you will get DRS. As you can see, that's now telling me I'm in the detection zone and DRS is coming up. This is where really that second corner is not the be all and end all in regards to overtaking. Even if you're behind someone, just sit behind them. Make sure you stick close enough to him within 1 second, and DRS open with the draft. You're going to draft past them before you get to the hairpin. So, yeah, the second corner is not a necessity in regards to overtaking. It's more of the setup for the prime overtaking opportunity, which is down into the hairpin. Now, as you can see, we're all the way up in the gears here. DRS activated, tight to the apex, to the left-hand side, covering as little track as possible. And then we're down into the hairpin, which is very, very essential for you getting right. One, to make sure you don't lose it yourself. And two, to make sure that if you are defending or you are overtaking, that you make it stick. So, we're braking just before the 100. Similar to the second corner. So we're not braking on the 100, we're braking just before it. I tried braking at the 100, but I just overshot the apex too often. You're just carrying too much speed. And you have to imagine, if you're in someone's draft and you've got DRS open, you're going to be carrying probably another 10 to 15 kph. So you will need to brake maybe even slightly before, or you'll have to be bang on the limit of, or the threshold of locking up those brakes, or locking up those tires. So be careful, be aware, guys. People seem to forget that all the time, that when you do draft someone, you're carrying more speed, so you're not going to be able to brake at your normal braking marker. So braking just before the 100s, or if you want to be specific again, where there's like this little AstroTurf runoff here, down into a straight line. You can see I'm applying a lot of brake pressure here. And then we're going to shift down all the way into first gear. Now it's a very late turn-in because this is a very tight hairpin. So we're turning in as we get pretty much just before to the end of the blue and white curb. Now if you're on a single monitor, this is difficult. I'm not going to lie to you, because as you can see here, the corner's out of view. If you're on an ultra wide or triples or VR, you've got the benefit of being able to see into the apex. So yeah, you need to just try and, if you're on a single monitor, try and turn in just before you get to the end of this curb, or this barrier on the left hand side, the orange barrier, or just before the blue and white curb. Shift down into first gear, trail braking a little bit to control the nose of the car, and then you can see the apex has come into view. I'm still trail braking, and then it's only when we reach the peak of the apex, that's when we then start to get on the throttle. So we've covered the inside of the apex, tight to it as we can, and then we're starting to get on throttle as we're unwinding the steering wheel. I'm not applying any more, I'm just waiting, I'm waiting. Patience is key. And then I don't short shift actually, I shift up into second as I've unwound the steering wheel. And then once the car's straight, very, very quickly here, you're going to hit the rev limiters. So you need to be on point with your upshifts here, because within the low gears, we know how quickly we work through them. So you need to be really, really quick. Otherwise, you're just going to hit the rev limiter and you're going to bog the car down, possibly spin the wheels as well. So be careful. And then we're now on full throttle, working our way up the gears in a straight line. Like, it's so essential there that you're accelerating only fully when you've got the car pointing in a straight line, because otherwise the car's just going to spin. So be careful there, guys. And then working our way up the gears, through the little kink, kissing the apex, moving the car over to the right hand side to the next corner, which is a left-hander. Now we're going to slow it down. What we're keeping an eye out for is the end of this blue and white curb. As you can see here, it comes into a point. This is where you want to start braking, as you can see. Shift down into third gear. Trail braking through, as you can see with my brake inputs. Once again, similar to the second corner, if you want to shift down into second, that's totally fine, but you have to be aware of your throttle input as you're going through the corner and on exit, because it's very easy to spin the car. I would advise that if you do shift down into second, that you then short shift up into third, so that you're just limiting the amount of torque that goes through the car and you're just much more in control. But me personally, I roll it through here in third gear, trail braking as you can see, and then as I hit the apex, that's when I'm then back on the throttle. Being careful not to apply too much throttle because of the steering input. I don't want to spin the car. We don't want to allow the car to run over to the right hand side here, because you're just covering unnecessary track and you'll lose time. So we want to keep it tight similar to the second corner, we want to keep it tight for the apex. We don't want to, while you can run wide, it's a safety option. It's not the quickest way around this track. So obviously we're trying to get around here as quick as possible. You can allow the car to drift out further wide, but you'll lose time. So we want to keep it to the middle of the track. As you can see, we're right in the middle now. And then we're on full throttle, quickly over to the left-hand side. These couple of corners come at you very quick now. Quickly over to the left-hand side to open up this right-hander. And then once again, we want to be as tight to this apex as we can, getting our wheels over the blue curb. But ideally, you don't want to be cutting this corner. One, it can pick you up a 1X. And two, there's a bit of a dip here where the car bobbles up and down. And I see a lot of people go through this and spin the car just because it gets unsettled once you go through the corner, because there is a real dip. So you want to go over the blue and white curb, not on the inside of it. And you can see I slightly lifted here. It's not full throttle because the car really does wobble. And I will admit, I actually lost a slight little bit of time here because I got back on full throttle a bit too early, which you'll see in a second. So you want to lift. It is only a slight lift, but you need to be patient. I got back on full throttle a bit too early, and you can see there I had a real big snap of oversteer. Real big snap. Did cost me a little bit of time because what I've had to do there, as you can see, my throttle input, because of that, so just to settle the car slightly, I've had to lift off again. Now these are only fractions of a second, but in these cars, it makes such a big difference. So you need to lift slightly when you're going through that corner, because otherwise, if you go full throttle, you either spin the car, because there's just too much lateral shifting movement, or you'll run out wide here and hit this big sausage curb, and that's just nasty. It is really nasty. It will do some damage to your floor, and it will give you an off track, and it's just not ideal at all. You'll lose a lot of time. So just a slight lift, be patient, and then make sure you've got through that corner before you get back on the throttle. All this is happening in a fraction of a second. Look, I'll play it in full speed again just so you guys can see. So just that little bit of hesitancy and obviously that slight mistake, it costs you time. It does cost you time because the next corner here is very, very fast. Now, this next corner can be a tricky one. It is, once again, another overtaking opportunity, but you have to make sure that you really make it stick, because it's quite easy, again, to force someone off or come bang wheels and end up in the wall. So we're turning in just before we get to the end of this straight. So you've got the, how do I say it, the boards that are shown here. You're turning in just before there, and pretty much just as you can see the corner come into view. So as we turn in, you can just kind of see the corner come into view. Turn in. Now I've lifted through here. I've lifted. Very similar to kind of the first corner, only slightly, because that just gets the front nose of the car turning in and just slows the car down enough that you keep it within the confines of the track, within track limits. You can see, just move it back a touch, that we keep the wheels over the apex, over the curb, and then that way we've ended up with two wheels on this blue curb here. Now, you can, anyone who's raced around Hockenheim knows, you can run out quite wide here, even dip your wheels on the gravel and get all four wheels on the inside of this blue and white curb, and you'll be okay. But it is unsettling. This car, this is not smooth here. The car does bobble up and down a lot. As we know, an F1 car doesn't like bumps. I did go through here in full throttle a few times and it was fine, but track conditions are not always going to be in 24 degrees. They might be slightly hotter. The track might not be as grippy. So the safest option, and I think the sensible option, is to just slight lift. You don't lose too much speed. It keeps you within track limits and heading down into the next corner. unless someone has really slung it up the inside there, it's not worth it. Very few people overtake down into this hairpin anyway, and it's quite easy for you to just cover the inside into this next hairpin. So slight lift is the safest option and the sensible option. That's what I'm suggesting, guys. So we move the car over to the right hand side. This happens very quickly, and we keep an eye on the 50 board marker. We're now heading into the stadium section. As you can see, braking just before it in a straight line. Now the key here is that you don't want to turn in too early. If you turn in too early, you're going to hit up onto this apex, and then you're just going to unsettle the car and run out wide and just cause yourself a whole lot of bother. So be patient. Shift down into third. You go down through the gears very quickly. We are trail braking through, as you can see. And then this is the fun part, guys. This is the fun part. So as you get halfway round the apex, you can see I'm starting to get on throttle. And really, as the big oil statue comes into view and is just kind of to the left center of your view, that's when you can then get on full throttle here. You trust the grip, trust the downforce of the car. Easy. Well, we're not on full throttle yet. Sorry, I take that back. But that's when we're starting to apply more throttle. And then as we unwind the steering wheel, we're back onto full throttle. We can use this runoff. Try and keep two wheels on the left-hand side of this AstroTurf. If you get all four wheels on the green stuff here, rejoining is quite an unpleasant experience, and you can spin the car because there is a bit of a dip here. As you can see just from that the car is bobbling up and down quite a bit. So if you get all four wheels over the blue curb, the blue and white curb, and you're on full throttle, I have seen people spin it. In other series and in other cars, albeit, but of course this car's more sensitive than others, so I expect it to be exactly the same. Then we are covering again this apex, kissing the apex, kissing this apex as well on the right hand side. Avoid the sausage curb. Allow the car to move over to the left hand side. Point it over to the left, and this little couple of corners here are real fun, especially in this car. So there is no real braking marker here. So as you get, the way I look at it is that as you kind of get halfway down this blue and white curb, and as you're looking into the apex, that's when you add a slight little bit of braking into fifth gear, trail brake to just control the nose of the car, two wheels over the blue and white curb. As we hit the apex, we're back on the throttle, but we're not on full throttle because we're kind of going uphill slightly to the right. That means that the weight shift in movement, if you get on full throttle too quickly, you'll spin the car there. And then quickly over to the left hand side. Now we don't want to be touching these sausage curbs. They're only little, but they're enough to unsettle the car. And if you drop a rear wheel tyre on them, you can also spin. If you go over them, they really unsettle the car and you can't rejoin, and it completely buggers up your entry into the last corner, which of course is an overtaking opportunity as well with the DRS into the first corner. Plus, you also pick up an off-track as well. So, a number of reasons to avoid running wide here on this corner. But you can see I'm still not on full throttle. Only minimally. I'm only slightly away from full throttle. But I'm then lifting off again into the second part. Making sure I'm getting the nose turning in. And then once I'm comfortable that the car is pointing pretty much into the apex, that's when I can get on full throttle. Hit the apex, full throttle, and exit the corner. Use the runoff here. No issue with that whatsoever. And then DRS mode deployed again and across the start-finish line. And there we go, guys. A lap of Hockenheim ring, a 1:10.86 to be exact. There's probably more speed, probably more time to be found out there. As I said, had a little bit of a wobble in the middle of the track, but I'm happy with that. It's a very quick lap again, so lots happening specifically in that last sector. A lot of time can be lost there. So yeah, put plenty of practice in, guys. It's very much a feel. The last sector is very much a feel sector as well, but hopefully this guide gives you a basis to go upon and it makes you more consistent and improves your lap times. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and see you for the next one. Bye.